Well, this is going to be another one about this grooming gang scandal again. Now Sadiq Khan, won't be surprised if the king is in this. This is what I'm getting down to eventually. Yep.
To properly tackle
I bet he has.
deal with grooming gangs. This is part of the campaign. A conspiracy, as far as I'm concerned.
It's not a conspiracy, it's real.
That grooming gangs, Pakistani men who behave in this way, are never caught in London.
Yeah.
It is something that I think all of us need to be concerned about, because Sadiq Khan is heading closer and closer and closer to the premiership of the United Kingdom.
And why would the king be giving him an honour and everything else?
Not that likely, but Sadiq Khan may well become a member
Not
of
far.
Parliament, and we know that he can be incredibly effective, because the way that he got Ed Miliband elected as Labour leader, and incredibly dangerous. See the way that he has protected grooming gangs. What I'm going to say to you in this video is rather different to anything that you've ever heard before. I'm going to go through the reasons why I believe that there, first of all, should be prosecutions of people like Sadiq Khan and Peter Farhay for being members of grooming gangs. They're not directly, but it's by something called joint enterprise. This idea that if you are supporting somebody who is committing a very serious crime, you could be held just as responsible as them. And also, I'm going to talk about a new criminal offence that I believe it's vital that whoever is the next Prime Minister, whether that be Nigel Farage, whether that be Nick Tanconi, whether that be anybody who is on the right of British politics, and I hope it is certainly one of them, whichever one of those people come in, there needs to be a new criminal offence. I'm going to also go through the case against Sadiq Khan, because I don't want people to watch this video and say, oh, it's just because he is of Pakistani descent. It's just because he's a Muslim.
No, it's not.
All of this. There is credible evidence that Sadiq Khan is protecting grooming gangs, whether that be for political reasons,
for King Charles and who?
Nonetheless, there is a credible case. I'm going to make that case, and I'm going to suggest some solutions. Hello, everyone. This video is paid
We're all in it
for
together.
details of how to donate to patriotic causes. It's below. Please do send us a couple
Why do you think they're all corrupted?
Don't worry about it, but we are able to do a huge amount with the small amounts of donations.
Why do you think they've all been able to lie and get away with the CVs?
Big bang.
Why do you think the King's obsessed with Angela Rayner? What's that about?
So first of all, what is going on here?
Yeah.
First of all,
What really is going on?
Questions about grooming gangs. That is to say that when he was asked at the London Assembly, are you somebody, what are you doing about grooming gangs? He has consistently refused to comment. He basically says,
and he better have to start
what do you mean grooming gangs? What are they? Now, I'm going to be very specific. I am not one of these people who will use graphic terms to describe
what's taking place. We
don't do that when it comes to school shootings. We don't do that when it comes
because
to murders, whatever. We have nice
they're all in it
terms
together, yeah?
that we
And
use.
I'll tell
That
you
is
why.
not me
I'm
undermining
concerned,
or
and I have every right
denigrating
to
the
be
suffering of the young people. It's just because
it's the fact
I'm on
that
talk radio
pedo
and people phone
services
me
in
all
this
the time, by the way,
fucking
to complain about
country
this, but I'm on talk radio,
wrongly,
and the terminology
falsely
that I
adopted
use
my
has to
little girl.
reflect the terminology that's used on the breakfast show.
And they
And
can't
obviously,
bullshit
I
now
think the
for what they
children of this
want to
country have been
for.
through
Now I
enough with
know
grooming gangs
it's to do
without
with
them having
this.
to
They
listen
want
to
to
the
carry
graphic
on some
details
sort of
while they have
grooming
their
gang.
cornflakes in the morning.
Well,
So when
I'll
I
tell you
use the term
something
grooming
now,
gangs,
Sadiq
it
Khan,
is
the
not
government,
because
King
I
Charles, all of
don't
them.
understand what has
You
taken
better
place
go
or
and get my little
belittle
girl back
those
to her
victims. But
mother.
in the case of
Me,
Sadiq Khan,
Caroline
it's
Poynton.
very
You
clear that
bury.
he is. Now I'm going to say specifically, there is increasing evidence that the issue here is that there is a specific offence that is perpetrated by Pakistani Muslim immigrants. That is it. Now, at the same time as, more knife crime takes place amongst the black community, more burglary takes place amongst the white community, and of course more of the grooming gangs are Pakistani. Well, they're all Pakistanis in reality. There's just one or two of their mates who are also involved. Now, police forces up and down the country, social services up and down the country have been brilliant at disguising what has taken place.
Taking my little girl.
Give the example of the girl
and anybody else's children they've took away from them. Social pedo services.
Get her back to social services. The taxi went stopped, needed paying. The social services, instead of paying for the taxi, phoned back her abusers and said, "Please, can you come pay for this taxi?" And they, of course, took her away.
And is this what they're doing to my little girl?
The case of the man who broke into the house where his daughter was being held, and the police arrested him and prosecuted him.
Well,
There's
they're not
no
quite
doubt
doing that bit,
that
but they
the
might be
police
doing
and
something
social
tomorrow,
services
Joe.
and
What are
councils
they
were
doing?
alongside the grooming gangs, and they still
They better
are.
go and get back to
I
them
think that what
mother.
we've seen in terms of Jess Phillips, the way that
All
she
of
has
them, Jess
attempted
Phillips,
to
all of
stop the
them.
public
I did
inquiry is
say,
remarkable. Look,
I
you
keep
know, the
saying
attack
it.
in
I said it in
Nottingham
Tommy Robinson's
was
rant the
really,
other
really
day,
bad. There was a
and
public
I'm
inquiry
saying
about
it
how that happened. How there could be
every
a public
single
inquiry
time.
into that and not one
I
into
find
grooming is
more
remarkable. But
evidence
what did Keir
of
Starmer
who
say
and
about it?
what
Well, he said,
I
I think it's going to be too
am
frustrating for the
going to say
victims.
it.
Basically, he said the victims don't want to tell their story. When is that ever true?
Yeah, well, they're wrong
Secondly,
because
he
I'm
said
a
it would be too
victim.
difficult in the witness stand for them.
Bullshit. I'm
Thirdly,
a
they've got
victim
drug problems, therefore they
to
do
their
this first.
grooming gang
Well, I would say
scandal.
all of these are
I'm
problems in court
42 years
cases
old
that
and
the
a
Crown
mother now.
Prosecution
And
Service
now
get
they've
over.
got my
And we
little
see again,
girl.
they put screens in there, they have people by video link, they take witness statements in text only. But what you have to remember is, with this public inquiry, it's not particularly cross-examination, is it? All we want to know is their stories, and we want to ask the central question:
And they can
are we
ask me
importing this from abroad? I will tell you, by the way, what the public
on what
inquiry will say.
happened
And
to me.
I've said this in previous videos, so if I'm being repetitious, I apologise.
I've
But it's
given
worth making the
permission.
point. Again,
I'm
the
giving
end
me
of the public
permission.
inquiry will be: look,
If any reporters or anybody out there
the
would
Conservative
like
government under
some
David Cameron
records
cut back police budgets and cut
of someone that's
substance-sensitive
42
budgets
years
and shut
old,
short
been through the
staffed
system, I've been
programs.
in care,
Therefore,
I've been
that is the
abused,
reason
I've been
why it
trafficked
all
out by
happened.
the
Do you remember Grenfell
system.
Tower, where the fire
If
inspector said
anybody
it was
wants
safe and then
any
it flambéed?
information,
And
if they
then they
get
said, what we
hold of
need is
me,
more fire inspectors.
Caroline
No!
Poynton
You need to sack the fire
from
inspectors who
Bury,
said it was safe.
I will
Right?
be
We
quite
don't need more
happy
of them,
to
we need fewer
cooperate
of them.
and give you
Right? I mean, at
the
least if there'd been
details. I've
no
got
fire
full care
inspectors, people might have
records.
done their own inspection before they moved in. I mean, I say that
Just I've
with a
got full
smile on my
records
face,
of
but I'm
what they've
being
done
deadly,
to me
deadly
and my
serious.
little girl.
We don't make the problem worse. More
And
inspectors
just
just
because
won't
I've
give
been
up
in
the job.
care or
They'll
whatever,
love
they
everything
used
they've
that
got and leave the
against
job.
me. Oh
We
yeah, they
don't
used
want them
everything. Oh,
in that position.
used everything they
So
tried
now,
they could,
on
but
to
they haven't
joint
got anything
enterprise, which I think is extremely important.
really.
We
They
talked
didn't
about
have enough.
how Sadiq
They
Khan's
had
given
no
no
rights.
specific funding for the Metropolitan
And
Police. I
since
want to
that
talk
day
before
they
I
took
go
my
through
little
this
girl away,
video
I've not
properly
stopped.
about
No,
joint
I haven't
enterprise.
stopped, and I will
So,
not.
imagine now
My
you
research is
were
getting
going to commit
better and
a armed
better.
robbery, as an example. Right, now, we all together, I know what you're up
Level
to.
1
We've
now, Mr.
discussed it
Fricking Government.
together.
Level 1
And what we've now
English.
decided is
Level
I'm going
2,
to help you in the
I'm
following way.
university
I'm
now.
going to ensure that the CCTV is turned off. I'm going to ensure the police
Yeah,
investigation
they're
is
going to
still
ensure
going. I'm
everything,
going
like
to
with
ensure that evidence
coronavirus and like the
disappears.
rest of it.
I'm going to ensure that the
Yeah,
police arrest
there's a
the
lot they've
victims
done.
and bully them out of making allegations against you. What you would say then, if you were the CPS, if you were the police,
That
you would
what they
say
done
this is
to
a
me, and
joint
it bullied me
venture
to take my little
between you
girl
and
away
me.
from me. So
The
that
fact I didn't run into the back of the
I
vehicle
could
with the shotgun
speak out.
doesn't mean I'm not
They've
part of the
never
gang.
given me
You have to ask yourself
compensation. They've
about
lied
Sadiq
to me
Khan,
about that.
the man who denies
Oh
the
no, they've
crime has
lied to me
existed
about the
at all.
compensation. They've left me
And
here in a
also,
house.
then
The
he says
council won't
that
touch it,
he won't allocate
although
any
it needs
resources
all
to the
doing
police
up, and I've had a
specifically for
solicitor.
an
I've had
investigation
everything.
about it. Well, I
Mate, I've
think
had
you're getting
everything, and
dangerously
Sadiq Khan's
close
one of them,
to a
innit?
joint
He's done it
venture,
as well.
aren't you? What
With
about
the
Sir Peter
king.
Fine when he goes down to
Yeah.
former Chief Constable
Who's he doing
of
it
Greater
for?
Manchester Police, when he goes
Yeah.
down to
When he goes to see the king.
Rochdale and he says, I'm not willing to discuss this issue. And of course, it's because of the whole idea of diversity. What about Simon Dantrop?
Diversity,
And
the
I think Simon
king,
Dantrop
yeah.
is a really, really good example here of where this joint enterprise comes in. Simon Dantrop is the MP for Rochdale. He's the person that raised the issue of the grooming gangs, which actually was particularly brave for him because the perpetrators were in Rochdale, whereas the actual victims were in Haywood and Middleton next door. So there was nothing politically in it for him. Now, he had a breakup with his wife, and he sent some flirty text messages to a girl who was like 19. So, the press ran the following. Simon Dantrop attempts to groom a teenager, as if that was the same. We talked earlier in this video about the way that we call it grooming teenage girls, but it's not, right? The fact that they used the same terminology to silence Dantrop, I think was deeply, deeply offensive. And I get people phoning up saying, why are you allowing this
I have
person,
evidence
this
as
not
well
person, on your channel? He wasn't
of
that.
what's
Right, all
happened.
right. He shouldn't have been chatting up a 19-year-old bird. I accept that. But it wasn't
They
the
used it in the
grooming
criminal record
of
against
teenage
me all
girls
my
that we're
life.
talking about with the Pakistani community, and to try and compare the two, I think is absolutely, absolutely dastardly. So I now say, well, okay, you know, the guy who did that to Dan Chuck went on to be the police and crime commissioner of Greater Manchester. The chief constable of Greater Manchester will also know it.
Manchester. Well,
Why
I'm
can't we
from Bury,
prosecute them for a
Manchester.
joint
Well,
enterprise?
I
If you
found
look at Sadiq
North
Khan, when he says
Manchester
he doesn't
Hospital.
even know what grooming
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
what you could say is, you could say, well, it doesn't happen in this patch. And that would be true. There would be no
Bullshit.
prosecutions in Tooting,
It does.
even though it has a large Pakistani Muslim population. But of course, I have been in Stratford from when he was mayor of Greater London, rather than just an MP. Now, the question comes, in terms of this joint enterprise, well, hang on a second.
Why are you lying? What's he doing?
Is the reason why with these prosecutions are not happening in London because there are no grooming? Or is it because the Mayor of London has deliberately stopped the Metropolitan Police from running a proper investigation? Well, first of all, we do know that it took place in Stratford. Secondly, what is unique about London that's so different to Keighley, that's so different to Oxford, that's so different to Burnley, Blackburn, Rochdale? Why is it that uniquely those Pakistani Muslims that emigrate to the United Kingdom are involved in grooming in Burnley, but aren't involved if they happen to move to London? That is a buzzing question, or could it be that the reason that there have been very few prosecutions in London because of the same reason there were very few prosecutions in Rochdale in the 80s and 90s, or no prosecutions, because the police and social services were turning a blind eye. And that makes the allegation even more serious against Sadiq, because it starts to say that he is somebody who is ensuring this crime continues for the purpose of political correctness.
Family judges,
Something very
court,
much to
Manchester
think
family
about.
court, taking my little girl away.
If you're talking about Sadiq Khan defending bad people, look, I will give you an example of him defending Babar Ahmed.
When I'm not a bad
said a number
mother.
of things about Babar Ahmed.
I'm not a bad
First of all, he was his best friend at school. Then he said he was his cousin. Then he said they went to the same school. Then he said they vaguely knew each other. Then he said they'd never met. And the reason why he said
I do
those
have
three things
problems
was
the
when
same as anybody else, yeah.
Babar
I
Ahmed
mean,
was sent to
what person do you know on the day in the planet in the world that don't have problems?
went to visit him 3 times. One of which was before he was an MP. We're not allowed to talk about that.
No, not allowed to talk about all that.
Meeting, and I got told they weren't interested in what Matt Rabbit said, they were interested in what Sadiq Khan said. Because at the time there were serious questions about why he was continually defending terrorists from the Hezbollah Sharia group.
Yeah.
There are former members of Hezbollah
Told
Sharia
you they're all
who claim that while
terrorists.
Sadiq Khan was never a member,
I've
he was
already
always
written
considered
it.
kindred spirit. Now, to be fair, in defence of Sadiq,
we need terrorist organisations. I've already said we do not have any governments. We have been taken over by the terrorist organisation. Thank you. I'm right.
And it may well be also that they were wrong. But
and AI's wrong because he keeps telling me King Charles ain't involved or there's no documents, legal documents to say he's changed, converted to being an Islam. Yeah, Al Qaeda, it's there, what I've written as well, yeah. Yeah.
Now, I will say that I do agree with the family of Babar Ahmed that the fact he'd never been to the United States of America meant he shouldn't have been extradited to the United States of America. I think this bill that Tony Blair signed that allowed the extradition
Tony Blair now. Then the king. Then we are.
Blair said that the Americans would have a simple arrangement. There was no prospect of getting Pakistan. Anyway, so that is evidence of badly towards bad people when he sees it as politically expedient. But now I was going to say to you about a crime that I thought I wanted to talk to you about. My understanding is that this crime is valid and viable. I've taken legal advice at the patron fund's expense to do it. Right. Here's what you do. You have a crime of assisting an offender when it comes to grooming gangs. That is to say that if you are somebody who, like Sadiq Khan, like Peter Farhey, has sought to cover up this level of criminality, you yourself can be convicted of being a member of the gang. However, I believe that the punishment should go further. If you are a police officer, a social worker, or an elected politician, I believe the penalty for conviction of this offence should be death. And the reason I say that is very, very simple. I have often seen.
I'm not having this no more.
Let's explain this properly. The death penalty doesn't necessarily act as a deterrent, because for people like perverts or whatever, who are just so ingrained within their psyche that there's nothing you can do to stop them. But actually, an extremely draconian punishment will stop some people. Imagine you were told that burglary was punishable by death. I think burglars would go down considerably. It would also be seen as grossly disproportionate. But my point is this: the people that are being involved in this covering up and doing it for political expediency, they're basically bad people, but they're not bad enough to behave in the grooming gangs themselves. And so if you are so selfish that you will cover up the abuse of a child in order to protect your career, then you are definitely somebody who will dob somebody in
Yeah.
if you believe you're going to lose your career and receive
Take
the
the
death
children
penalty
away,
as
yeah.
a result of ignoring
Like
it.
people
I think
innocent
that
mothers like
is
me.
something that we really, really need to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be marvellous if you could turn around and you could say, right,
Dirty
people like
people.
Steve Town, people like Steve
Dirty
Spine, people
people.
like the former, I forget the name of the former
Dirty
Commissioner of
cunts.
Greater Manchester, but those people now are going to be criminally prosecuted and they are at risk of the death penalty for it.
Good.
That would certainly shake things up.
Won't it?
But I will say one final thing. The problem here actually is partly the response of the British government, partly the response of
Yeah.
councils, partly the response of the police, but actually it's about importing an alien culture to the United Kingdom. I've always said that
So
there
who
are
was
reasons
that to
why
do
countries
with?
are poor, and the two reasons are almost always
King
poor
Charles
government
one.
and the
Yep.
subjugation of women. People go, oh, but what about the
The
pillaging of
Queen
places? Well, hang
neglected
on a
her
second.
duties,
The
you
country on
see.
earth that has probably been more
I know one
invaded
wants to talk
and more
about her.
pillaged
She didn't
and
do what
suffered
she
more
said she was
genocides
going
and
to
had
do.
more looting than anywhere else is
She
Poland. And
lied,
it is fast
shouldn't
becoming
she?
one of the richest countries on earth. Look, conversely, with Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, when Rhodesia became Zimbabwe, it is one of the richest countries in terms of natural resources in the world. It was called the breadbasket of Africa. Poor governance and corruption has caused multiple famines in a country that used to export food around the world. There is this great tendency in the West to believe that the reason that some countries are rich is automatic and some countries are poor is automatic, but that's not actually true. People want to tell you that the reason the United Kingdom was so successful was just the transatlantic slave trade. They have no money other than selling slaves from Africa. That's simply absolute garbage. The profits went to only a small number of people. But the reason why Britain is so rich is because of its unique system of government, because of its stability, because of rule of law, because of the fact in the past you could trust the police, you could trust the government to be light touch. You weren't going to be put under arbitrary house arrest as a result of COVID. You weren't going to see political prosecutions. You weren't going to see political prisoners in this country. That's the reason why it was so successful. And so I make this point to you when we talk about equal but different, when we talk about cultural enrichment, what we're really talking about is bringing people from inferior cultures to the United Kingdom and learning from them. The police corruption, learning from Pakistan. Government corruption, learning from Pakistan. Family voting, learning from Pakistan. Knife crime or machete crime from Somalia. There's all these sorts of, and Rwanda in place, there's all these sorts of things that are becoming part of Britain. We need to be able to stand up and say, look,
We're not
if you
having
want to
this.
come to this
Fuck off,
country and you are worth bringing in,
King
that's fine.
Charles.
But you have to understand the reason your
Get
countries are
the
dumped
fuck
is
out
because
of
of the
my
way it's
house.
run. If you want to run Burnley more like Lahore, frankly, it will become a dump like Lahore. If you want to run Britain in the same way as Somalia, if you come from Somalia and say, oh, I'll tell you what London needs to be a bit more like Somalia, congratulations, you're savage. Right? It's junk. It's garbage. You know, President Xi of China, with his friend David Lammy, let's increase Chinese influence in London. Hey, let's
Let's
not.
not.
Let's not do that. Let's say the Hong Kong Chinese, who are ethnically
Leave him in
exactly the
Hong
same,
Kong
but
where they should
culturally
be.
entirely different, have produced far more for the world than China has. Far more. And in fact, Beijing has changed
Yeah.
significantly since Hong Kong came in. They basically decided that every political principle they ever had was wrong. And that is how it just shows you now what people try and do is talk about race. Well, let's not talk about race. I mean, look,
Let's
you
not
have
talk
some
about race
countries,
if
I
there
mean,
is
what
no
is it?
such thing as
Somalia is
colour
badly run,
and racism.
Somaliland is phenomenally
No,
well
well,
run.
there
They're
is
next to
race,
each
but
other,
there's no such thing
ethnically, it's
as
exactly the same
racism.
people. So I think this
There's
race
race
thing
in colouring
is a
people, yeah.
non-starter. But the
Of course
political
there has to be.
expediency
There has to
needs
be
to
race
end.
colouring
And
people.
also,
It's
more importantly,
the way
all
the
the
world works.
controlled immigration from third world
That
countries
is the
needs to
way
end.
the
So if we
world
really
is.
want to
That's the
deal
way the
with
world
this problem,
is.
yes, you can have the police round these people at left, right, and centre, but they shouldn't be in Britain anyway.
No,
And
and
let's
I
tell you
think not
about
just
a
him.
second. and law has a role to bring in. I think it's time for us to clarify our immigration system. I've always thought questioning is law, which is this idea
We should not be
that what we're
mixing
going
this
to
all
do
in
is
place.
we're going to have the right to defect. I believe in a multicultural society, you have to have the right to defect and leave the United Kingdom. And what you do is you exchange your passport at Heathrow Airport, formally renounce your citizenship, and then we fly
well, this
you
is what
wherever
I'm
you want to
saying
go
I
to
want to
fight
do
for
and get
whoever
out of
you
here.
want. So I
Thank
think we
you.
need to do that. But I think what we also need to do is
Thank
we
you.
need to
I
say
should
the
be
war's
allowed to
over, it's
do
time
that
to go home.
under my
So
granddad,
whatever reason we're bringing people to the
Poynton
country,
Fred.
we need to ask them to leave at the end of the war.
Fred
If they
Poynton.
want to apply for work permits or whatever,
That
and
served
similarly,
in the
when
war.
we deported German POWs after the Second World War,
Yep.
some of them were married local girls and stuff, okay, fine.
My
Accept
granddad
that.
is a
But you do need
Stockport
to,
man.
in general, go home. I will tell you, when I was working as Ukrainian aid worker, I only did a very tiny amount, so I don't want to be a alternative.
The
But
Poynton family.
what would happen was the women would come across the border and they would stay in the closest possible place to their men. Now, for most of them, that was Poland and Moldova and places like that.
Here.
For some, it was Slough and Gloucester,
war.
but fundamentally, it was certainly.
He survived
for most
the
of them, it
sinking
was their
battle, my
cousins
granddad.
living a few miles because they want to be as close to their husbands as possible. By the way, little Moldova never had any immigration at all. 3.5 million people. It took 350,000.
Why are we taking
Why are we taking all these immigration from places like Albania, from places like Libya, from places like Somalia? Before the war in Ukraine, it was the poorest country in Europe. So these benefit shoppers, these economic migrants pretending to be refugees didn't go. But genuine refugees during the Ukraine war, they flooded into the place because they can speak the lingo, they like the food, and it's easy, and it's very, very close to Ukraine. So that's an amazing thought about genuine refugees. But the war's over, it's time to go home. Also, every single person convicted of a crime who was born abroad, who is a dual, no, not even a dual citizen, anyone who was born abroad, go home. That's it. Even if you've been accused of something comparatively minor like shoplifting, you'll be returned to your country of origin. We don't want foreign criminals of any description. So those are the laws that I'm suggesting we bring in. The joint enterprise conspiracy, the Sadiq Khan law, if you like, Shamima's law, I think we need to bring in for the right to defect. And we also need to bring in that management of immigration where we can say that that we're going to start sending people back. If they're refugees from war, when the war's over, they leave. And if they're convicted of any crime at all, then they really, really need to go. It's not our job to rehabilitate shoplifters from abroad. If you are worthwhile here, that's good. And all of this right to family life, well, you know what?
Not allowed the right to a family life.
No one else is. Absolute garbage. Thanks so much for watching this. The link is in the description to support the Patriot Group and the Patriot Fund, rather, which have funded the research into the legal advice I've taken. Also, want to explain about the Patriot Fund, what we've done. We've been supporting the Women's Safety Initiative, absolutely fantastic campaign. Sorry, I'm going to have to repeat that because the that'll run that magic. I will get the updates out about the Patriot Fund, and I want to thank you all. The link is in the description to the Patriot Fund. Until next time, arrivederci and goodbye.
There's a strong and growing sentiment that there is two-tier policing in the UK because of videos like this, which I'll play you in a minute.
Is it? Two-tier, see? It's a terrorist organisation. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. Last one. Page 8. And Sadiq Khan's name can go in there now, along with Labour. There we having it.